The locket felt impossibly warm against Maya's palm, despite the cool metal, as if it had been waiting in someone's pocket rather than buried in dark earth. She snapped it shut, her heart hammering against her ribs as she stepped back from the storage unit's entrance. The August sun beat down mercilessly on the concrete, creating shimmering heat waves that made the rows of identical units blur together like a mirage. "You finding anything good in there?" called Jerry, the auction house employee, as he wheeled a dolly past her unit. His weathered face was already slick with sweat, even though it wasn't yet 10 in the morning. Maya forced a smile, slipping the locket into her pocket. "Just some gardening supplies, nothing special." But her voice caught on the lie. Everything about this was special in the worst possible way. She'd attended dozens of these storage auctions over the past few months, each time hoping to find something valuable enough to cover another month of rent or a car repair. It was a desperate person's lottery ticket, and she'd become very good at being desperate. The other bidders had already moved on to the next unit, their voices echoing off the metal buildings as they evaluated someone else's abandoned life. Maya remained frozen at the entrance of hers, staring at the methodically arranged soil. In the harsh morning light, she could see that the mounds weren't just organized, they were labeled. Small wooden stakes emerged from the earth at regular intervals, each bearing dates written in faded black ink. She knelt carefully, her 7 months pregnant body protesting the movement, and brushed dirt from the nearest marker. The wood was smooth, well-crafted, nothing like the cheap garden stakes she'd seen at hardware stores. The date read Maya Chen, age 7, October 15th, 2001. October 15th, 2001. She remembered that day with startling clarity. Her second foster placement, the Johnson family, had taken her to a pumpkin patch. Mrs. Johnson had bought her a small plastic spider ring from the gift shop, the first present Maya could remember receiving. She'd treasured it for exactly 3 days before another foster child had flushed it down the toilet out of jealousy. Maya's hand shook as she moved to the next stake. Maya Chen, age 9, December 20th, 2003. Christmas morning at the Hendersons, where she'd woken up to find a single wrapped gift with her name on it, a diary with a tiny lock and key. She'd hidden it under her mattress and filled it with desperate wishes for a real family. Each date corresponded to a memory she'd buried deep, moments from a childhood she tried not to think about. But how could someone else know these specific days? The foster system kept records, sure, but not of plastic spider rings and secret diaries. These weren't official milestones, they were private moments, feelings she'd never shared with anyone. The baby kicked hard against her ribs, as if sensing her distress. Maya pressed both hands to her belly, trying to center herself. She'd spent 32 years learning to be practical, to focus on what she could control. Right now, that meant getting back to her apartment before the morning heat became unbearable and figuring out how to turn this bizarre discovery into rent money. But as she stood to leave, something else caught her eye. Partially visible beneath one of the larger mounds was the edge of what looked like fabric, blue cotton with white polka dots. Maya's breath caught in her throat. She knew that pattern. Without conscious thought, she began digging, her manicured nails breaking as she clawed at the soil. The fabric belonged to a stuffed elephant, worn thin from countless nights of being clutched by desperate fingers. She pulled it free from the earth, and 20 years fell away in an instant. Mr. Peanuts. She'd named him Mr. Peanuts because of his grey color, not because it made any logical sense. He'd been her constant companion through 4 different foster homes before disappearing during her move to the Washington's house when she was 10. She'd cried for weeks, but Mrs. Washington had said it was time to stop acting like a baby anyway. The elephant should have been destroyed by time and moisture, but he was perfectly preserved, his button eyes still firmly attached, his trunk still soft. Even his smell was exactly as she remembered, a mixture of fabric softener and the particular scent of childhood comfort. Maya clutched Mr. Peanuts to her chest, tears streaming down her face as the storage unit began to feel less like a purchase and more like a trap, Someone had been collecting pieces of her life, preserving them with meticulous care, waiting for this moment when she'd be desperate enough to bid on a unit full of dirt. The question that terrified her most wasn't who had done this. It was how long they'd been watching, and what else they knew about the life she thought she'd built for herself. As her baby moved restlessly in her womb, Maya realized that her carefully constructed world was about to crumble, one buried memory at a time. Maya sat in her Honda Civic in the storage facility parking lot for 20 minutes, Mr. Peanuts clutched against her chest, the locket burning like a secret in her pocket. The air conditioning had given up the fight against the Bakersfield heat months ago, but she couldn't bring herself to drive home yet. Home meant pretending this hadn't happened, and she wasn't ready for that performance. Her phone buzzed with a text from her landlord, rent reminder, due in 5 days. Thanks, Bob. Maya stared at the message, calculating and recalculating numbers that never added up right. The storage unit had cost her $200 she didn't have, money that was supposed to cover groceries this week. She'd gambled on finding something valuable to resell, and instead she'd unearthed a mystery that made her question her sanity. The drive home took her through the familiar landscape of her carefully ordered life. Past the Walmart where she picked up extra bookkeeping shifts when they needed seasonal help. Past the thrift store where she'd bought most of the baby clothes folded neatly in her apartment. Past the clinic where Dr. Martinez would ask her next week if she was eating enough, sleeping enough, stressing too much for the baby's sake. Her apartment complex squatted like a beige afterthought against the endless California sky, 32 units of people just scraping by. Maya had lived here for 3 years, longer than anywhere since aging out of foster care. It was stability, of a sort. Mrs. Rodriguez upstairs always saved her coupons for baby formula. Tom in 2B had promised to help install the crib when it arrived. These weren't deep relationships, but they were something, a neighborhood, witnesses to her existence. Maya climbed the stairs slowly, her key sticking in the lock like always. Her apartment opened to reveal the life she'd built from nothing, second-hand furniture arranged with care, a small dining table that doubled as her desk, covered with client files and tax forms. The nursery corner she'd carved out of her living room, painted soft yellow because she'd wanted to be surprised about the baby's sex. Everything clean, organized, purposeful. She set Mr. Peanuts on the coffee table and stared at him. In her apartment, surrounded by the adult life she'd constructed through sheer determination, he looked impossible, like a piece of someone else's story that had wandered into hers by mistake. The afternoon stretched ahead with its familiar rhythm. She had 3 client files to finish, small businesses whose books she balanced for $40 each, Mrs. Patterson's craft store, Miguel's auto shop, the insurance office downtown that always paid late but always paid. Honest work that kept her fed and housed, if barely. But every time Maya opened a spreadsheet, her eyes drifted to the elephant. Mr. Peanuts had been her secret keeper, the only constant in a childhood of temporary placements. She'd whispered her fears to him in dark bedrooms, told him about the nightmares that woke her up crying for a mother she couldn't remember. The foster parents had called it adjustment issues and attachment disorder, clinical terms for a little girl who just wanted someone to stay. Maya had learned to stop wanting that. She'd learned to be self-sufficient, to ask for nothing, to make her own way. The pregnancy hadn't been planned, but she'd approached it like everything else in her life, with determination and a detailed budget. She'd read every book, taken every class, prepared for single motherhood the way other people prepared for war. The locket seemed to pulse in her pocket, reminding her that someone else might have different plans for her story. Her neighbor's television murmured through the thin walls, a cooking show host cheerfully explaining how to make Sunday dinner for a family of 6. Maya pressed her hands to her belly, feeling the baby's rhythmic kicks. In 2 months, she'd be responsible for another person's entire world. She'd already picked out daycare, arranged 3 months of part-time work she could do from home, calculated down to the dollar how long her savings would last. Everything she'd built, everything she'd planned, rested on the foundation that her past was settled, known, finished. She was Maya Chen, former foster kid turned responsible adult, ready to give her child the stability she'd never had. That story made sense. That story had rules she understood. But Mr. Peanuts sat on her coffee table like evidence of a different story entirely, one where someone had been watching her for decades, collecting pieces of her life, arranging them in a storage unit like exhibits in a museum of childhood trauma. One where the careful distance she'd maintained from her past might have been an illusion all along. Maya closed her laptop without finishing the Patterson file. The numbers would still be there tomorrow, but tonight she needed to hold on to what she knew for certain, the weight of her baby moving inside her, the key to an apartment that was truly hers, the small but real life she'd built from nothing. She just wasn't sure how long any of it would survive the questions she was afraid to ask. Maya woke to her phone ringing at 6:47 a.m., the shrill sound cutting through the restless sleep she'd finally managed after midnight. Mr. Peanuts still sat on the coffee table where she'd left him, watching her with button eyes that seemed too knowing in the grey dawn light. Maya, Chen? The voice was professionally neutral, the kind she'd learned to dread from years of dealing with social services and landlords. Speaking. She sat up slowly, her pregnant body protesting after a night on the couch. She'd been afraid to take Mr. Peanuts into her bedroom, as if keeping him in the living room might contain whatever he represented. "This is Sandra Mills from Bakersfield Storage Solutions. I'm calling about Unit 247, which you purchased yesterday at auction." Maya's stomach clenched. "Is there a problem?" "Well, we've received an inquiry about that particular unit. A woman called this morning claiming there was some kind of mistake, that her rental payments were current. I'm looking at our records, and the last payment was made on July 15th, but she insists she's been making monthly payments through an automatic transfer." The baby kicked hard against Maya's ribs. What kind of woman? She wouldn't give her full name, just said she was Chen. "Any relation to you?" The last name match seems like quite a coincidence. Chen. Maya's mouth went dry. According to every official document she'd ever seen, her mother had been Linda Chen, a 22-year-old woman who died in a car accident when Maya was 5. No relatives had come forward, no family had claimed her. She'd become a ward of the state because Linda Chen had supposedly taken all of Maya's connections to the world with her when she died. What did she sound like? There was a pause. "I'm sorry, I can't really describe a voice over the phone, but she seemed very upset about the unit being sold. She asked specifically who had purchased it and whether they'd found anything inside." Maya's free hand instinctively moved to her pocket, where the locket had been living like a guilty secret. "You didn't tell her my name, did you?" "Of course not. We have strict privacy policies, but she did leave a message for whoever bought the unit. She asked me to tell them that the garden wasn't finished and that some things were meant to stay buried until the right time." The words hit Maya like ice water. A garden. The carefully arranged mounds of soil suddenly made terrible sense. Someone had been cultivating her past like crops, planting memories and waiting for harvest time. "Miss Chen, are you there?" "Yes, I'm here." Maya's voice sounded foreign to her own ears. "Did she leave a phone number?" "She said she'd call back." "Maya, given the unusual circumstances, we wanted to let you know that you're under no obligation to return any items you've found. The unit was legally purchased after proper notification procedures. But if you're concerned about any family disputes..." Family. The word lodged in Maya's throat like a bone. She'd spent 32 years believing she had no family, that she'd been alone in the world except for the temporary kindness of strangers paid to house her. The foster care system had been clear: no relatives, no next of kin, no one coming for her. "I need to go," Maya managed. "If she calls back, don't give her any information about me. Promise me." After hanging up, Maya sat in the growing morning light, pieces of impossible puzzle shifting in her mind. Someone who called herself Chen had been paying for that storage unit for 20 years. The same 20 years Maya had been bouncing between foster homes, aging out of the system, building a life from nothing. Someone had been close enough to collect the intimate artifacts of her childhood, a stuffed elephant that had disappeared during a move, dates that corresponded to private moments no caseworker would have recorded. Maya pulled the locket from her pocket and opened it again. The little girl staring back at her looked happy, loved, held by invisible arms just outside the frame. She tried to remember when this photo might have been taken, but her earliest memories were fragmented things: the smell of hospital disinfectant, a social worker with kind eyes explaining that her mummy had gone to heaven, the first foster home's unfamiliar kitchen. But what if someone had been watching all along? What if the woman who was supposed to be dead had been close enough to know about plastic spider rings and secret diaries, close enough to preserve them like shrine offerings? Maya's carefully constructed life suddenly felt like a performance she'd been giving for an audience of one. Every achievement, every struggle, every moment she'd believed herself truly alone. Had someone been documenting it all, waiting for the right moment to reveal themselves? The baby moved restlessly inside her, as if sensing her distress. In 2 months, Maya would become someone's mother, someone's entire world. She'd promised herself that her child would never feel abandoned, never wonder where they came from or whether anyone had ever wanted them. But how could she give her baby the truth about their family when she was no longer sure what the truth was? Maya looked at Mr. Peanuts, then at her phone, then at the morning light streaming through her apartment windows. She could pretend this call had never happened. She could donate the elephant to charity, throw the locket away, return to her spreadsheets and her carefully budgeted life. Or she could drive back to that storage unit and dig deeper into the garden someone had been tending in her name. Maya stared at Mr. Peanuts for another hour, paralyzed by the weight of choice. Every rational part of her mind screamed warnings: walk away. Don't dig deeper. You're 7 months pregnant and barely making rent. This isn't the time for mysteries that could unravel everything. But the locket in her pocket seemed to pulse with its own heartbeat, syncing with the baby's movements until she couldn't tell where her fear ended and theirs began. She called in sick to her morning client appointment. Mrs. Patterson's books could wait another day. The lie came easier than expected, probably because emotional devastation felt close enough to the flu. Maya had never been good at lying, a trait that had served her poorly in foster care but well in building her reputation as a trustworthy bookkeeper. Her clients paid her because she was reliable, predictable, safe, everything she was about to stop being. The drive to the storage facility felt like swimming upstream through molasses. Every red light offered another chance to turn around, to choose the smart path back to her apartment and her color-coded calendar and her carefully calculated future. Maya found herself taking longer routes, getting deliberately lost in residential neighborhoods where normal families lived normal lives behind normal secrets. A woman pushing a stroller waved from a front yard. Maya waved back automatically, wondering if that stranger could see the fault lines cracking across her face. Soon Maya would be pushing her own stroller through these same streets, but what kind of mother would she be? One built on lies, or one brave enough to excavate the truth? The baby had been restless all morning, pressing against her ribs like they were trying to escape. Maya pressed back gently. "I know," she whispered. "I'm scared too." When she finally reached the storage facility, Maya sat in the parking lot for 20 minutes. Engine running, air conditioning fighting a losing battle against the August heat. The metal buildings shimmered in the distance like a mirage. Unit 247 waited behind that rolling door, holding God knew what other pieces of her supposedly finished past. Her phone buzzed with reminders: grocery shopping, buy milk, bread, prenatal vitamins. Call Dr. Martinez about Tuesday appointment, finish Patterson invoices. The mundane tasks of her real life, her safe life, the life where the biggest problem was whether she could afford organic vegetables this week. Maya turned off the engine. The storage unit felt different in the afternoon heat, more oppressive somehow. The carefully arranged dirt looked less like a garden now and more like a graveyard. Maya stood at the threshold, key in her shaking hand, afraid to cross from ignorance into knowledge. What if Chen really was her mother? What if Linda Chen had faked her death, abandoned Maya to foster care, but stayed close enough to watch? The thought made Maya sick with a rage she couldn't afford to feel. A mother who watched from the shadows while her 5-year-old daughter cried herself to sleep in strangers' bedrooms. A mother who collected artifacts like trophies while Maya learned to ask for nothing, expect nothing, trust no one to stay. But what if Chen was someone worse? A stranger who'd been stalking Maya for decades, someone obsessed enough to construct an elaborate shrine to her childhood trauma. The storage unit could be evidence of something dangerous, something that threatened not just Maya, but the baby she was carrying. Either possibility terrified her. Maya's practical mind catalogued the risks. She was alone here, pregnant, vulnerable. She didn't know who might be watching or what they wanted. The smart thing would be to call the police, report the harassment, let professionals handle whatever this was. But professionals would ask questions she couldn't answer. They'd want family history, background information, connections Maya had never had. They'd see a former foster kid with abandonment issues, making mountains out of coincidental molehills. They'd file a report that went nowhere while Maya spent the next 2 months jumping at shadows. The baby kicked again, hard enough to take her breath away. In less than 8 weeks, Maya would be responsible for another human being. Everything she'd built, her apartment, her business, her carefully constructed independence, was meant to give this child the security she'd never had. But how could she protect her baby from threats she didn't understand? Maya's hands trembled as she raised the rolling door. The dirt waited, patient and knowing. Somewhere beneath those carefully labeled mounds lay answers that could destroy the life she'd built or explain why she'd never felt like she truly belonged in it. She thought about Chen's message. The garden wasn't finished, and some things were meant to stay buried until the right time. Maybe this was the right time. Maybe being on the verge of motherhood herself had triggered whatever mechanism had been waiting in the shadows of her life. Or maybe she was about to make the biggest mistake of her carefully controlled existence. Maya picked up the shovel anyway. The first shovelful of dirt felt like crossing a line drawn in permanent ink. Maya's hands shook as she chose the mound labeled age 6 to 7, her logical mind still screaming that she should walk away, call someone, do anything except dig deeper into this impossible garden of her past. But her body moved with its own desperate momentum. The baby shifted restlessly inside her as she worked, as if sensing they were both about to enter territory from which there might be no return. Each scoop of rich, dark soil felt deliberate, purposeful. Someone had arranged this dirt with the same care Maya used to organize her client files, everything in its proper place. 3 inches down, her shovel struck something soft. Maya's breath caught as she brushed away dirt to reveal a small purple backpack, the kind elementary schools required for field trips. She lifted it with trembling hands, recognizing the faded Disney princess stickers she'd applied with such careful precision. This backpack had disappeared during her second foster placement, when the Hendersons decided they couldn't handle her behavioral issues after all. Inside, she found a composition notebook with Maya's diary, keep out written in purple crayon on the cover. Her own 7-year-old handwriting, earnest and shaky, filled with entries she'd forgotten she'd ever written. Today, Mrs. Henderson said, I can't talk about my real mom anymore because it makes me sad. But I dreamed about her again last night. She had long black hair like mine and she was looking for me. I drew a picture of our house before the accident. I remember yellow curtains in the kitchen and a garden with tomatoes. Mrs. Henderson says I'm making it up, but I know it was real. Sometimes I feel like someone is watching me, like my mom is close by but hiding. I wish she would come get me. Maya's vision blurred as she read her own childhood handwriting, each entry a small heartbreak from a little girl who'd refused to stop believing in fairy tale endings. She'd forgotten about these dreams, these stubborn convictions that her mother was somehow still alive. The foster parents had called it denial and unhealthy attachment, sending her to counselors who taught her to accept reality. Her mother was dead, no one was coming. She needed to focus on moving forward. But what if 7-year-old Maya had been right? Deeper in the backpack, she found more impossible things. a class photo from Riverside Elementary that she distinctly remembered losing, a crayon drawing of a stick figure family labeled me and mommy in purple letters, a small plastic horse from a McDonald's Happy Meal that had been her most treasured possession until it vanished during a move between homes. Each item was perfectly preserved, as if someone had been maintaining a museum of her childhood. But more disturbing than their condition was what their presence implied. Whoever had collected these things had been close enough to know when Maya lost them, close enough to retrieve them before they disappeared forever. Maya's hands shook as she dug deeper into the age 6 to 7 mound. At the bottom, wrapped in plastic like evidence, she found a child's drawing that made her stomach lurch. She recognized her own artwork immediately. The careful way she'd drawn trees, always with faces hidden in the bark, always watching. But this particular drawing showed something that made her blood run cold. It was a picture of her foster home on Maple Street, drawn with the precision only possible from someone who'd seen it in person. But in the corner, barely visible in faded crayon, was a figure standing behind a tree across the street. A woman with long black hair watching the house. Watching Maya. The drawing was dated 2 weeks before Maya's most precious possessions started disappearing from that placement. She'd thought losing those things had been carelessness, the chaos of a disrupted childhood, but someone had been taking them. Someone had been close enough to watch her through windows, to know which toys mattered most, to collect pieces of her life like evidence of love or documentation of loss. Maya dropped the drawing and scrambled backward, suddenly understanding that she wasn't just uncovering her past, she was confirming that her entire childhood had been observed, catalogued, curated by someone who'd chosen secrecy over rescue, watching over, claiming her. The storage unit felt like a trap now, the carefully labeled mounds revealing their true purpose. This wasn't random collection or coincidental preservation. This was decades of deliberate surveillance, someone building a shrine to the childhood they'd allowed to be traumatized. Maya's phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Some gardens require patience. Don't disturb what isn't ready to bloom. The words appeared on her screen like a threat disguised as poetry. Someone was watching her right now, seeing her discovery, communicating in real time. Maya looked around wildly, scanning the empty facility for movement, for eyes, for any sign of the person who'd been the invisible architect of her life. She grabbed the backpack and diary, abandoning the shovel as she stumbled toward her car. Behind her, the storage unit gaped open like a mouthful of secrets she wasn't ready to swallow. But as she reached her car, Maya realized with growing dread that she'd already crossed the threshold. There was no going back to ignorance now. Maya's hands shook so violently she could barely get the key in the ignition. The text message seemed to burn through her phone screen. Some gardens require patience. Don't disturb what isn't ready to bloom. Someone was watching her right now, had been watching her for decades, and she was trapped in their game with rules she didn't understand. She drove aimlessly through Bakersfield's suburban streets, checking her mirrors obsessively for cars that followed too long, faces that appeared too often. Every shadow felt pregnant with threat. The backpack sat in her passenger seat like radioactive evidence, its innocent Disney stickers now seeming sinister in the afternoon light. Maya needed help, but who could she trust with something this impossible? The police would want proof she couldn't provide. Her few friends would think pregnancy hormones had finally driven her over the edge. She'd spent 32 years being self-sufficient because the alternative, depending on people who could leave, hurt too much. But, as another text arrived, the fruit falls when the tree is ready, Maya realized her isolation was exactly what her watcher wanted. Someone had spent 20 years ensuring she stayed alone, manageable, predictable. That realization crystallized into desperate clarity. Maya pulled into the parking lot of Bakersfield Community College, where she'd taken night classes in accounting. If she was going to fight back against decades of manipulation, she needed allies who understood research, investigation, finding truth in buried documents. Professor Janet Martinez taught criminology and had always encouraged students to think critically about evidence. Maya had taken her criminal justice elective 3 years ago, drawn by Dr. Martinez's reputation for helping students who needed second chances. If anyone would listen to an impossible story without immediate judgment, it would be her. The criminology department felt like a sanctuary after the claustrophobic menace of the storage facility. Maya found Dr. Martinez in her office, grading papers with the focused intensity that had made her Maya's favorite instructor. She looked up with genuine warmth when Maya knocked. "Maya, Chen, what a wonderful surprise. How are you? And congratulations, when are you due?" "October," Maya managed, sinking into the familiar chair across from Dr. Martinez's desk. "Dr. Martinez, I need help with something that sounds crazy. The best puzzles usually do." Dr. Martinez set down her red pen and gave Maya her full attention. "Tell me everything." Maya found herself spilling the entire story: the storage unit auction, the locket with her childhood photo, the systematic collection of her lost belongings, the text messages that proved someone was watching in real time. Dr. Martinez listened without interruption, occasionally taking notes, her expression growing more serious with each revelation. "Show me," Dr. Martinez said simply when Maya finished. With trembling hands, Maya opened the purple backpack and spread its contents across the desk. The diary, the drawing of her foster home with the watching figure, the perfectly preserved artifacts of a childhood she'd been told to forget. Dr. Martinez examined each item with professional detachment, but Maya caught the flash of anger in her eyes when she read the diary entries. "Maya, this isn't the product of an unbalanced mind. This is evidence of systematic stalking, possibly spanning decades." Dr. Martinez picked up the drawing showing the figure behind the tree. "This suggests physical surveillance of a minor. That's serious criminal behavior." "But what if—" Maya's voice cracked. "What if it's my mother? What if Linda Chen didn't really die?" Dr. Martinez leaned back in her chair, considering. That would make this even more disturbing. A parent who fakes their death, abandons their child to foster care, but maintains secret surveillance. That's not love, Maya. That's control. The words hit like a physical blow. Maya had been so focused on the impossibility of having family that she hadn't considered what kind of family would behave this way. Someone who watched her struggle through childhood without intervening. Someone who collected her belongings like trophies while she learned not to get attached to anything. "What do I do?" Maya whispered. "We document everything. We trace the storage unit payments, research Linda Chen's death certificate, build a timeline of your missing belongings, and we make sure you're safe." Dr. Martinez's voice carried the authority of someone accustomed to fighting institutional indifference. "You're not alone in this anymore." Maya's phone buzzed again. The gardener knows when harvest time arrives. "Soon." Dr. Martinez read the message over Maya's shoulder, and her jaw tightened. "We're reporting this to police today. And Maya, you're not going back to that storage unit alone. From now on, you move carefully and you move with backup." For the first time in hours, Maya felt like she could breathe properly. Someone believed her. Someone with expertise was taking this seriously. She wasn't crazy, and she wasn't alone. But as Dr. Martinez began making phone calls to her contacts in local law enforcement, Maya realized that gaining allies also meant accepting a terrifying truth. Whatever had been carefully orchestrated in the shadows of her life was now moving towards some kind of climax. The garden was ready for harvest. Maya sat in Dr. Martinez's office as her professor spoke in urgent, clipped tones to Detective Sarah Walsh from the Kern County Sheriff's Department. The familiar academic space, with its towers of criminology textbooks and framed degrees, felt like a fortress against the chaos consuming her life. But even here, surrounded by the trappings of law and order, Maya couldn't shake the feeling that invisible eyes were still watching. "Yes, I understand the evidence threshold for stalking charges," Dr. Martinez said into the phone, her free hand drumming impatiently on her desk. "But we're talking about potential surveillance of a minor spanning decades, plus active harassment of a pregnant woman." No, I'm not exaggerating. Maya watched her professor fight for credibility she herself had never possessed. Dr. Martinez had credentials, connections, the kind of institutional authority that made people listen. But even she was meeting resistance from law enforcement who dealt in concrete proof rather than impossible puzzles. 2 o'clock tomorrow, Dr. Martinez said finally, hanging up. Detective Walsh will meet us at the storage facility. She's skeptical, but she's willing to look. What if whoever's watching sees the police? Maya asked. What if that triggers something worse? Dr. Martinez's expression darkened. Maya, I need you to understand something. The person who's been orchestrating this, whether it's your biological mother or a complete stranger, they've been escalating their contact. These text messages aren't random. They're building towards something, and that something is likely tied to your pregnancy. The baby shifted restlessly, as if responding to the tension in Maya's voice. She'd been so focused on the mystery of her past that she hadn't fully processed the threat to her future. Someone had been collecting pieces of her life for decades, maintaining detailed surveillance, waiting for the right moment to reveal themselves. What better trigger than the birth of the next generation? The timing isn't coincidental, Dr. Martinez continued. You win a storage unit auction 2 months before your due date, discover evidence of lifetime surveillance, and suddenly you're receiving cryptic messages about harvest time. This person wants something from you, and they want it soon. Maya pulled her diary close, rereading her 7-year-old handwriting. Sometimes I feel like someone is watching me, like my mom is close by but hiding. Her child self had been right, but instead of comfort, that truth now felt like violation. Every moment of grief, every birthday spent wondering about her mother, every small triumph achieved alone, all of it had been observed by someone who chose secrecy over connection. Dr. Martinez, what if I don't want to know the truth? What if ignorance really was safer? Her professor studied her with the same intensity she'd once used to dissect case studies. Maya, the truth is already in motion. Your watcher has decided it's time to reveal themselves, and that's going to happen whether you participate or not. The question is whether you'll have some control over how it unfolds. Maya's phone buzzed with another message. The mother plant must be pruned for new growth to flourish. Dr. Martinez leaned over to read it, her face grim. That's not metaphorical anymore. That's a direct reference to your pregnancy, and it sounds like a threat. The academic sanctuary suddenly felt flimsy, inadequate protection against decades of patient planning. Maya imagined her watcher sitting somewhere in Bakersfield, crafting messages designed to terrify and control, satisfied that their careful tending was finally bearing fruit. The image made her sick with rage and fear in equal measure. I need to call work, Maya said, surprising herself with the steadiness in her voice. Tell them I'll be out for a few days. Cancel my appointments. Dr. Martinez nodded approvingly. Good. And you're staying somewhere else tonight? Not your apartment? Not anywhere predictable? Do you have somewhere safe? Maya started to shake her head. Her isolation had been so complete, so carefully maintained. But then she thought of Rachel Torres, her client who'd become something approaching a friend over years of managing her small business accounts. Rachel had invited her to dinner multiple times, had asked about the pregnancy with genuine interest, had the kind of warm, chaotic household that felt like everything Maya had missed. Maybe, Maya said. I have a client. She's offered before. Call her. Don't go into details, just say you need somewhere to stay while dealing with a family emergency. The irony is bitter, but it's not entirely untrue. As Maya dialed Rachel's number, Dr. Martinez began pulling books from her shelves: forensic psychology, criminal profiling, stalker behavior patterns. The sight of those clinical texts made Maya's situation feel simultaneously more real and more surreal. She was becoming a case study, a criminal justice puzzle, the kind of story Dr. Martinez would probably teach to future students. Rachel answered on the second ring, immediately offering her guest room with the kind of uncomplicated generosity Maya had never known how to accept. But as she arranged temporary sanctuary, Maya realized that her careful, controlled life was dissolving entirely. Tomorrow she would return to the garden of her buried past, accompanied by police and armed with questions that might destroy the fragile peace she'd built. The harvest was coming whether she was ready or not. Maya barely slept at Rachel's house, despite the comfortable guest bed and the safety of being surrounded by a real family's cheerful chaos. Every creak of the settling house made her tense. Every car passing on the quiet suburban street seemed to slow near the windows. By 5 a.m., she gave up pretending to rest and sat watching the sunrise through unfamiliar curtains, her hand resting protectively on her belly. Rachel had been mercifully incurious about the family emergency, bustling around making extra coffee and insisting Maya eat breakfast before whatever difficult day lay ahead. But as Maya picked at her toast, she caught Rachel's concerned glances. The way her friend's cheerful chatter couldn't quite mask her worry about Maya's obvious fear. "You know," Rachel said carefully as she packed lunches for her own children, "if you need to stay longer or if there's anything else I can do." The kindness was overwhelming. Maya had spent so many years maintaining careful distance from people like Rachel, people with normal families, people whose mothers hadn't mysteriously died and left them with surveillance instead of love. But now that distance felt like another trap, another way her watcher had kept her isolated and manageable. "Thank you," Maya managed. "I don't know how long this will take to resolve." At exactly 2 p.m., Maya met Dr. Martinez and Detective Sarah Walsh at the storage facility. The detective was younger than Maya had expected, with sharp eyes and an air of professional skepticism that made Maya's stomach clench. This was her one chance to make the impossible sound credible, to transform decades of careful manipulation into actionable evidence. "Miss Chen," Detective Walsh said, shaking Maya's hand, "Dr. Martinez has filled me in on the basics, but I'd like to hear your account directly." Maya found herself telling the story again. The storage unit auction, the locket, the systematic collection of her childhood belongings. But this time, standing in front of the beige metal door that had become the epicenter of her unraveling world, the words felt different, more urgent, more desperate. Detective Walsh listened without interruption, occasionally taking notes, but Maya could see the skepticism growing in her expression. A pregnant woman claiming decades-long surveillance based on recovered childhood toys. Text messages that could be from anyone with a cell phone. Stories about watching figures that a traumatized 7-year-old might have imagined. "Let's see what we're working with," the detective said finally. Maya's hands shook as she lifted the roll-up door. The storage unit yawned open like a mouth ready to swallow them all. The neat mounds of soil looked exactly as she'd left them, but now they seemed different in front of witnesses, less like evidence and more like elaborate gardening supplies that could have innocent explanations. Detective Walsh walked slowly between the dirt piles, examining the hand-lettered labels with growing confusion. "Miss Chen, can you explain why someone would organize soil by your age periods?" The question hung in the air like an accusation. Maya realized how insane it all sounded from the outside. A pregnant woman convinced that landscape materials were evidence of lifetime surveillance. But then Dr. Martinez stepped forward with Maya's purple backpack, spreading its contents across a clean tarp she'd brought specifically for documentation. "Detective," Dr. Martinez said with academic authority, "I've examined these artifacts extensively. This diary contains entries written in Maya's childhood handwriting, documenting feelings of being watched that align with textbook stalking victim accounts. These drawings show specific details of her foster home placements that would be impossible to recreate without direct observation." Detective Walsh knelt beside the evidence, her skepticism wavering as she studied the diary entries. Maya watched the detective's face change as she read 7-year-old Maya's words. "I know someone was watching me at recess today. I saw her behind the fence." "These are dated entries spanning several years," Detective Walsh said slowly. And you say you have no memory of writing about feeling watched? I was told it was trauma-related fantasy, Maya said. The foster parents and counselors all said I was making it up because I couldn't accept my mother's death. Detective Walsh pulled out her phone and photographed each item methodically. Maya felt a flutter of hope. Someone with real authority was taking this seriously, building an official record. But then her own phone buzzed with a new message that made her blood freeze. Too many weeds in the garden now. Time for aggressive pruning. The detective read the message over Maya's shoulder, her expression hardening. That's definitely escalation. Maya, has anyone else seen these texts? Anyone who might be playing an elaborate prank? The question felt like a slap. Maya realized that even with the evidence spread before them, even with Dr. Martinez's professional validation, she was still fighting for credibility, still being asked to prove that her terror was justified. But before she could answer, her phone rang. Not a text this time, an actual call from an unknown local number. Maya looked at Detective Walsh, who nodded grimly. Answer it. Put it on speaker. With trembling fingers, Maya accepted the call. The voice that emerged was female, gentle, familiar in a way that made Maya's chest tighten with recognition and dread. Hello, sweetheart, the woman said. I think it's finally time we met. Maya's world tilted sideways. The voice, soft, maternal, devastatingly familiar despite 27 years of silence, seemed to reach through the phone and wrap around her throat like a noose. Mom? The word escaped before Maya could stop it, sounding small and broken in the stifling heat of the storage facility. Oh, my darling girl, you found my garden. There was genuine warmth in the voice, pride even, as if Maya had accomplished something wonderful rather than stumbled into a nightmare. I've been watching you dig so carefully, so thoughtfully. You always were such a methodical child. Detective Walsh was frantically gesturing to Dr. Martinez, mouthing words about tracing the call, but Maya couldn't focus on anything except the impossible reality of her mother's voice. Linda Chen, supposedly dead for 27 years, yet speaking to her with the casual intimacy of someone who'd never left. Where are you? Maya whispered. Close enough to see you, sweetheart. You look tired. Pregnancy is exhausting, isn't it? I remember when I was carrying you, the heat that summer was just like this. Maya spun around, scanning the parking lot, the neighboring storage units, the office building across the street. Detective Walsh had drawn her weapon, holding it low but ready, her eyes sweeping the area with professional intensity. But Maya saw nothing except ordinary afternoon shadows that suddenly felt full of menace. Why? Maya's voice cracked. Why did you leave me? Why let me think you were dead? Oh, sweetheart, I never left. I've been here through everything. Your first day of school, your foster family's graduation, your first apartment, every scraped knee, every nightmare, every birthday candle you blew out wishing for your mother. I was always watching, always protecting you from a distance. The casual cruelty of those words hit Maya like a physical blow. Her mother had watched her cry herself to sleep in foster homes, had observed her isolation, her struggles, her desperate attempts to build an identity without family or history, had collected pieces of her childhood like souvenirs, while Maya learned to expect abandonment from everyone who claimed to care. That's not protection, Maya said, her voice growing stronger with rage. That's torture. You don't understand yet, but you will. Everything I did was to keep you safe, to prepare you for what's coming. The other families, the ones who've been looking for us, they can never know about you. About the baby. Detective Walsh stepped closer to the phone, her voice sharp with authority. Ma'am, this is Detective Walsh with the Kern County Sheriff's Department. We need you to... The line went dead. Maya stared at the silent phone, feeling something fundamental break inside her chest. For a moment, one terrible, traitorous moment, hearing her mother's voice had felt like coming home. The recognition had been instant, cellular, the voice that had sung her lullabies and read her bedtime stories before everything changed. But now, with that connection severed, Maya was left with the devastating truth. Her mother wasn't dead, but she wasn't saved either. Maya, Dr. Martinez's voice seemed to come from very far away. "Maya, we need to move, now." Detective Walsh was already on her radio, calling for backup, establishing a perimeter, using words like active threat and potential kidnapping risk. But Maya couldn't process any of it because her phone was buzzing again, this time with a photo message that made her knees buckle. It was a picture of Rachel's house, taken from across the street, showing Rachel's minivan in the driveway, her children's bikes scattered on the front lawn, the guest room window where Maya had spent the sleepless night. The second photo showed Rachel herself, carrying groceries from her car, completely unaware that she was being photographed, completely unaware that offering kindness to Maya had made her a target. The third photo was the most devastating, Maya's ultrasound image, the one from her last doctor's appointment that she kept in her wallet. Somehow, impossibly, her mother had obtained a copy of her unborn daughter's first picture. "She's been in my apartment," Maya breathed. "She's been through my things. She knows where I stayed last night. She knows about the baby." Detective Walsh grabbed Maya's arm, pulling her toward the parking lot. "We're leaving, right now. This location is compromised." But as they hurried toward the detective's unmarked car, Maya's phone buzzed one final time. "The garden party is tomorrow at sunset. Come alone, or I'll have to invite your new friends to participate. The harvest won't wait much longer." Maya stopped walking. The weight of 27 years of manipulation, of careful isolation, of systematic psychological torture disguised as maternal love crashed down on her all at once. Her mother hadn't faked her death to protect Maya. She'd done it to control her. And now that control was absolute. Dr. Martinez had been wrong. The truth wasn't in motion. It was a trap that had been patiently waiting for Maya to walk into it, and she'd brought innocent people with her. "She's going to hurt them," Maya said quietly. "Rachel, her kids, anyone who tries to help me. This was never about reunion. This was about possession. All her careful progress, all the safety she'd tried to build, all the hope she'd allowed herself to feel. It was crumbling like sand through her fingers. The harvest was coming, and Maya was finally beginning to understand what crop her mother had been cultivating all these years. Detective Walsh was already barking orders into her radio, calling for immediate protection details and surveillance teams, but Maya barely heard the words. She stood frozen in the blazing heat of the storage facility parking lot, staring at the ultrasound image on her phone screen, and suddenly everything clicked into place with horrifying clarity. The storage unit hadn't been a hiding place, it had been a nursery. All those carefully labeled mounds of soil, organized by her age, weren't just evidence of surveillance. They were growth charts, development markers. Her mother hadn't been watching Maya's life unfold, she'd been cultivating it, pruning and shaping and controlling every element, with the patience of a master gardener tending a prized specimen. "Dr. Martinez," Maya said, her voice eerily calm despite the chaos around her. "The soil samples you mentioned analyzing, what did you find?" Her former professor looked startled by the question, glancing nervously at Detective Walsh, who was coordinating the response. "Maya, this isn't the time for—" "What did you find?" Maya repeated, turning to face her fully. "You said you were having them tested. What grows in that soil?" Dr. Martinez hesitated, then pulled out her phone, scrolling through emails. "The preliminary results came back this morning. The soil composition is unusual. It's incredibly rich, almost artificially enhanced. But Maya, there were also traces of human remains," Maya finished. "Bone meal, hair, fingernails." The words hung in the superheated air like a death sentence. Detective Walsh stopped talking into her radio, her face going pale. Dr. Martinez's mouth opened soundlessly. Maya felt a strange calm settling over her, the terrible peace that comes with finally seeing the complete picture. "She's been feeding me to that soil my entire life. Every haircut, every lost tooth the foster families threw away, every medical sample from doctor visits. She collected all of it, composted it, made me part of the garden that was supposed to grow my replacement. The revelation hit her like a physical blow, but also like a key turning in a lock she'd been rattling against for 27 years. Every foster placement that had failed, every potential adoptive family that had suddenly changed their minds, every relationship that had withered before it could bloom. Her mother had been pulling strings, pruning connections, ensuring Maya remained isolated and dependent on a love that had never actually existed. The pregnancy, Maya continued, her hand moving protectively to her belly, that's the harvest. She doesn't want me back. She wants my daughter. She's been cultivating the perfect mother, traumatized enough to be grateful, isolated enough to be controllable, desperate enough for family to hand over everything. Detective Walsh grabbed Maya's shoulders, forcing eye contact. Maya, I need you to listen to me. We're going to protect you and your baby. We're putting you in protective custody immediately. Safe house, armed guards, the works. She can't get to you. But Maya shook her head, the pieces still falling into place with devastating clarity. You don't understand. She's not some random stalker. She's been planning this for decades. She knows every move we'll make because she's been studying law enforcement response patterns the same way she's been studying me. The storage unit, the phone call, even this location, it's all been choreographed. Maya's phone buzzed again. Without looking, she knew it would be another photo, another demonstration of her mother's reach. This time it was Detective Walsh herself, taken from behind as she'd entered the storage facility 3 hours ago. Linda Chen had been watching them the entire time, documenting their investigation like a scientist observing lab rats. She let us find the storage unit, Maya said, her voice gaining strength with each horrible realization. The auction wasn't random. She stopped paying the rent knowing it would go to auction, knowing I'd been driving past that facility for years on my way to work, knowing I was desperate enough for money to bid on anything. She wanted me to find it. She wanted me to unravel. Dr. Martinez sank against the detective's car, her academic composure finally cracking. Maya, what you're describing isn't stalking. It's not even criminal obsession. It's systematic psychological conditioning on a scale I've never encountered. It's gardening, Maya corrected grimly. And tomorrow at sunset, she expects to reap what she's sown. The baby kicked hard against Maya's ribs, as if responding to the stress flooding her system. Maya placed both hands on her belly, feeling the fierce protectiveness that had been growing alongside her daughter. For 27 years, she'd been the passive subject of her mother's experiment, the watched, the studied, the cultivated. She wasn't just Maya Chen anymore. She was going to be someone's mother herself, and that someone deserved better than to become the next generation in Linda Chen's twisted garden. Detective Walsh, Maya said, straightening to her full height despite the crushing heat, I want to make a deal with her. Absolutely not. She's going to take my daughter whether I cooperate or not. But if I can control when and how the confrontation happens, maybe I can end this permanently. Maya looked at the photos on her phone one more time, then deleted them. It's time to burn down the garden. I said, absolutely not, Detective Walsh repeated, but her tone had shifted from dismissive authority to something closer to desperation. She was still clutching her radio like a lifeline, but Maya could see the growing realization in her eyes that traditional law enforcement protocols weren't designed for something this elaborate, this deeply rooted. Think about it, Maya said, surprised by the steadiness of her own voice. She's had 27 years to plan this. She knows every resource the police have, every procedure, every safe house protocol. She's probably been watching families in witness protection, studying how they move victims, learning the patterns. But there's one thing she can't predict. Dr. Martinez straightened, her analytical mind catching up despite the shock. What Maya might choose to do on her own. Exactly. Maya began pacing, her mind working with a clarity she hadn't felt in weeks. The crushing weight of revelation was transforming into something sharper, more focused. She's been controlling every variable in my life, but she's made one crucial mistake. She's assumed I'll react like the traumatized child she's been cultivating. She's expecting Maya the victim, not Maya the mother. Detective Walsh was shaking her head, but Maya could see her listening. Even if that's true, walking into a trap isn't strategy. It's suicide. Not walking into it, redesigning it. Maya turned to face them both, feeling something powerful crystallizing in her chest. She thinks she knows me, but she's been watching a performance my entire life. The desperate foster kid, the isolated pregnant woman, the confused daughter searching for answers. But what if all of that was just preparation? Dr. Martinez's eyes widened with understanding. You want to turn the tables, use her own methods against her. She's been patient for 27 years, Maya said, her hand moving to her belly where her daughter was shifting restlessly. But patience becomes weakness when you're working to a deadline. She needs this baby born into her control, which means she's operating under time pressure for the first time in decades. Detective Walsh looked between them, clearly fighting every instinct. Explain to me how deliberately engaging with an obsessed stalker isn't the worst possible idea. Because she's not just obsessed, she's proud. Maya pulled out her phone again, scrolling through the text message history. Look at these messages. She's not trying to hide anymore. She's gloating. She wants recognition for what she's accomplished, wants me to appreciate the artistry of what she's done. That pride is something I can work with. Maya's mind was racing now. 27 years of confusion, resolving into strategic clarity. Every foster home, every failed relationship, every moment of self-doubt. It was all data now. Information she could use to understand her opponent's psychology. I need resources, Maya said suddenly. Real allies, not just protection. Detective Walsh, what's the largest tactical team you can assemble by tomorrow evening? Maya and Dr. Martinez, do you still have contacts in psychological profiling? Federal level? Her former professor nodded slowly. Maya, what are you thinking? I'm thinking that my mother spent 27 years studying me, but I've been unconsciously studying her too. Every text message, every carefully placed artifact, every moment of this reveal, it's all been designed to demonstrate her power. But it's also shown me exactly how she thinks. Maya walked back toward the storage unit, standing in the doorway and surveying the neat mounds of soil with new eyes. Not evidence of her victimization, but a blueprint of her mother's obsession. Each labeled pile wasn't just a growth chart, it was proof of Linda Chen's need for control, for order, for recognition of her elaborate design. She wants me to come alone tomorrow because she's planned a climactic scene, Maya continued. The perfect mother-daughter reunion, the moment where I finally understand and appreciate everything she's done. She's been building toward this revelation for decades. Detective Walsh joined her in the doorway, studying the soil with professional eyes. And you want to give her what she expects? I want to give her something better, Maya said. I want to give her an audience. She's spent 27 years working in secret, denied recognition for what she considers her masterpiece. What if, instead of hiding from her, we offered her exactly what she's always wanted? The chance to explain her work to people who might finally understand its scope? Dr. Martinez was nodding now, her academic mind engaging with the psychological strategy. You're proposing to feed her narcissism. Let her think she's finally found people worthy of appreciating her accomplishment. While documenting every word for a federal case, Detective Walsh added, beginning to see the possibilities, and surrounding her with enough firepower to end this permanently. Maya felt her daughter kick again, strong and insistent, and placed her hand over the movement. She thinks she's been growing the perfect mother, but what she's actually created is someone who will do anything, absolutely anything, to protect her child. For the first time since this nightmare began, Maya wasn't just reacting to her mother's moves, she was planning her own. The scorching afternoon sun beat down mercilessly as Maya stared at the soil-filled storage unit, her decision crystallizing with each passing second. The weight of her unborn daughter seemed heavier now, not just physical burden, but responsibility, a future that demanded she stop running and start fighting. I need to make the call. Maya said, turning away from the storage unit. Right now, while I still have the advantage of surprise. Detective Walsh stepped closer, her hand hovering near her weapon out of pure instinct. What call? To accept her invitation. Maya was already pulling out her phone, scrolling to the last number that had contacted her. She's expecting me to spend the next 24 hours panicking, running, making desperate attempts to hide. Instead, I'm going to call her back and tell her I'm ready to hear what she has to say. Dr. Martinez grabbed Maya's wrist before she could dial. Maya, think about this. Once you make contact again, there's no taking it back. You'll be committed to this course of action. I've been committed since the moment I dug up that locket. Maya gently pulled free from her professor's grip. The only question is whether I face this as her victim or as someone who refuses to let another generation get pulled into her garden. The phone rang once before Linda Chen answered, her voice warm with surprised pleasure. Maya, sweetheart, I wasn't expecting to hear from you so soon. The endearment made Maya's skin crawl, but she forced her voice to remain steady. I've been thinking about what you said, about understanding, about the harvest, and... Maya could hear the eager anticipation in her mother's voice, decades of planning finally approaching fruition. It was exactly what Maya had hoped for, pride overriding caution. I want to know, Maya said, everything, the whole story, from the beginning. But not over the phone, and not in some public place where we might be interrupted. If you want me to truly understand what you've done, I need to see it all. There was a long pause, and Maya could practically hear her mother's mind working, calculating, adjusting her carefully laid plans to accommodate this unexpected development. You're different than I expected, Linda said finally. Stronger. Maybe that's what 27 years of your cultivation was supposed to produce. Her mother's laugh was genuinely delighted. Yes, exactly, you do understand. I knew you would eventually. Maya met Detective Walsh's eyes, seeing the detective's grudging acknowledgement that the psychological approach was working. Her mother was revealing more in this single conversation than they'd learned from weeks of investigation. Where? Maya asked. Where do you want to meet? There's a place I've been preparing. A greenhouse about 40 miles north of Bakersfield, off Highway 99. It's where I've been working on the final phase of the project, tomorrow at sunset, just like I said. Maya memorized the location while Detective Walsh frantically scribbled notes. And you'll show me everything, the complete scope of what you've been doing? Everything, darling. Every careful year, every difficult decision, every sacrifice I made to ensure you would be ready for this moment. You'll finally understand why it all had to happen exactly as it did. The casual mention of sacrifice, as if 27 years of psychological torture had been a gift, sent rage flooding through Maya's system. But she channeled it into determination, feeling her daughter respond to the surge of adrenaline with strong kicks. What about the others? Maya asked. The people who've been helping me? What about them? I need your word that they won't be harmed. Detective Walsh, Dr. Martinez, Rachel and her family, they were just trying to help. They're not part of whatever this is between us. Another pause, longer this time. Maya held her breath, knowing that her mother's answer would determine whether this plan was possible or catastrophic. They won't be harmed, Linda said finally, as long as you come alone. But Maya, if you bring law enforcement, if you try to turn our reunion into some kind of trap, then I can't make any promises about collateral damage. I understand. Do you? Because this is your last chance to choose family over strangers, to choose the mother who's loved you enough to spend decades preparing for this moment over people who've known you for days. Maya looked at Detective Walsh and Dr. Martinez, both of whom had risked their careers and safety to help her. Then she thought about Rachel, who'd opened her home to a desperate stranger, and about her unborn daughter, who deserved a world free from Linda Chen's twisted version of love. I'll be there, Maya said. Tomorrow at sunset, just me. She ended the call and immediately turned to Detective Walsh. How fast can you get a tactical team to a greenhouse north of Bakersfield? Maya, I'm not going alone, Maya said firmly. But she needs to think I am, at least until it's too late for her to disappear again. The final confrontation was less than 24 hours away, and for the first time, Maya would be walking into it on her own terms. The next 18 hours blurred together in a carefully orchestrated symphony of preparation that would have impressed even Linda Chen. Maya found herself at the center of what Detective Walsh grimly called the most complex tactical operation the Bakersfield Police Department had ever coordinated with federal authorities. By dawn, the safe house Rachel had become was transformed into a command center. Dr. Martinez had called in favors with the FBI's Behavioral Analysis Unit, and now Maya sat across from Agent Sarah Chen, no relation despite the surname that made everyone pause, a specialist in long-term stalking cases who'd flown in from Quantico overnight. "Your psychological profile of her is remarkably accurate," Agent Chen said, studying Maya's notes from the previous evening. "The narcissistic presentation, the need for recognition, the elaborate staging, it all suggests someone who views this as performance art rather than crime." Maya shifted uncomfortably in her chair, her daughter providing a constant reminder of what was at stake with each movement. She doesn't think she's committed any crimes. In her mind, she's been protecting and nurturing me, which makes her exponentially more dangerous, Detective Walsh interjected from where she stood studying aerial photographs of the greenhouse location. "Someone who believes they're justified will take risks that a conventional criminal wouldn't." The greenhouse sat on 40 acres of farmland that Linda Chen had purchased under a false identity 3 years ago. Satellite imagery showed a large glass structure surrounded by meticulously maintained gardens with only one access road and clear sightlines in every direction. It was simultaneously perfect for surveillance and impossible to approach undetected. "She chose the location specifically to control all variables," Agent Chen observed, "but that also means she's trapped herself in a space with limited escape routes. If we position teams correctly, she'll have nowhere to run." Maya studied the photographs, trying to imagine what her mother had been doing in that isolated place for 3 years. Growing what? Planning what? The thought of the elaborate preparations made her feel sick, but also strangely empowered. Every moment her mother had spent obsessing over this confrontation was a moment she hadn't been adapting to new circumstances. "What's the timeline?" Maya asked. Detective Walsh consulted her notes. "Team's position at 14, full perimeter established by 16. You go in at 19:30, exactly 30 minutes before sunset. Long enough for her to begin her presentation, not long enough for her to conclude whatever she has planned." Dr. Martinez looked up from her own psychological assessment notes. "Maya, you need to understand. Once you're inside that greenhouse, you'll be dealing with someone who's built her entire identity around this moment. If she realizes the encounter isn't proceeding according to her script, her response could be unpredictable." "I know." Maya had been thinking about little else since making the call. "That's why I need to give her exactly what she wants, at least initially. Let her think she's succeeded in making me understand." Agent Chen leaned forward intently. "Can you do that? Convincingly? Because if she suspects deception, I can do it." The words came out more forcefully than Maya had intended, surprising even herself. "You have to understand, I've been unconsciously performing for her my entire life. Every moment of confusion, every desperate search for family, every relationship that failed, she was watching it all, cataloging my reactions. I know exactly what kind of grateful, overwhelmed daughter she expects to encounter." The room fell silent as the weight of that statement settled. Maya realized she'd just articulated something that had been lurking beneath the surface of her consciousness, that her entire life had been, in a very real sense, a performance for an audience of one. "The wire will be virtually undetectable," Detective Walsh said, producing a device smaller than a button. "Audio and GPS tracking. If anything goes wrong, I abort immediately." Maya took the device, surprised by how light it felt for something that might determine whether she lived to hold her daughter. "But I need everyone to understand something. This ends tomorrow. Whatever it takes, however this plays out, I will not let my child grow up in the shadow of Linda Chen's obsession." Dr. Martinez reached out and squeezed Maya's hand. "You don't have to do this alone anymore." Maya looked around the room at the maps, the tactical plans, the concerned faces of people who'd become her allies in less than a week. For someone who'd spent 27 years believing she was fundamentally isolated, the support felt overwhelming and sustaining simultaneously. 27 years, Maya said quietly, her hand moving to her belly where her daughter was stirring restlessly. "Tomorrow night, one way or another, it ends." As if responding to her mother's resolve, the baby delivered a particularly strong kick. Maya smiled for the first time in days, feeling something that had been dormant for her entire life finally awakening. Not just protectiveness, not just determination, but the fierce, uncompromising love of a mother who would burn down the world before allowing harm to reach her child. The final test was 12 hours away. The greenhouse loomed against the dying light like a cathedral of glass and steel, its transparent walls revealing glimpses of impossible verdancy within. Maya sat in her car at the end of the dirt road, engine ticking as it cooled, watching the structure that had been built specifically for this moment. Somewhere in the surrounding farmland, she knew tactical teams were in position, but the isolation felt absolute. Her daughter kicked insistently as if sensing the tension radiating through Maya's body. "I know, sweetheart," she whispered, placing both hands over her belly. "Mama's scared too, but this is how we get free." The wire beneath her shirt felt impossibly small for something carrying so much weight. Maya touched it once, a gesture Agent Chen had warned against, then forced her hands to remain still. Every movement from here forward would be scrutinized by someone who'd spent decades cataloging her behaviors. The greenhouse door opened before Maya had taken 3 steps from her car. Linda Chen stood silhouetted in the doorway, and Maya's breath caught at seeing her mother for the first time since childhood. She was smaller than Maya remembered, elegant in the way that money and obsession could create, wearing a simple green dress that complemented the botanical paradise behind her. But her eyes held 27 years of focused intensity that made Maya's skin crawl. "You came," Linda said, her voice carrying genuine wonder. "My beautiful daughter, look how perfectly you've grown." Maya forced herself to move forward, each step requiring conscious effort. "You're exactly like I remembered, exactly like I dreamed you might be." The lie came easier than expected, perhaps because some part of her had dreamed of this reunion, had imagined a mother who loved her enough to move heaven and earth to find her. The reality was a twisted mirror of those childhood fantasies, but the emotional framework was familiar enough to inhabit. Linda's smile was radiant, transformative. "Come inside, darling. Let me show you what I've built for you, what I've built for us." The greenhouse interior was breathtaking and horrifying in equal measure. Every surface bloomed with life, orchids cascading from hanging baskets, vegetable gardens arranged in precise geometric patterns, fruit trees heavy with produce despite the August heat. But as Maya's eyes adjusted, she began to notice the other details. Photographs mounted throughout the space, chronicling her life from foster home to foster home. School records displayed like achievements, medical files arranged chronologically along one wall. 27 years of careful cultivation, Linda said, her voice rich with pride. "Do you see how everything connects? How every difficulty, every challenge was designed to strengthen you for this moment?" Maya stared at a photograph of herself at age 12, standing alone at a school dance. She remembered that night, the disappointment, the acute awareness of being different from the other children who had parents to pick them out dresses and take pictures. Now she understood that even then, her mother had been watching, documenting, collecting pieces of her pain like specimens. "The foster homes," Maya said, her voice barely steady. "You chose them, deliberately." Only the ones that would help you develop resilience, independence, the strength to be an exceptional mother yourself. Linda moved between the displays like a curator in her private museum. The Hendersons were too permissive. I had to intervene there. The Martinezes wanted to adopt you permanently, which would have derailed everything, but the others, the ones that challenged you, forced you to rely on your own strength, those were perfect. Maya felt rage building in her chest, but forced herself to channel it into the performance. You were protecting me, even when I didn't understand. Exactly. Linda's delight was genuine, childlike. You do understand. I knew you would eventually. You're so much smarter than I was at your age, so much stronger. That's what proper cultivation creates. They moved deeper into the greenhouse, past displays that chronicled every relationship Maya had ever attempted, every job she'd held, every address she'd lived at. The scope of surveillance was incomprehensible, requiring resources and dedication that spoke to obsession so pure it had become its own form of madness. And now, Linda said, stopping before a section of the greenhouse that was clearly still under construction, we reach the harvest phase. Your daughter will be born into love, into understanding, into a family that will never abandon her the way I was forced to abandon you. Maya's blood went cold as she realized what she was looking at. A nursery, complete with crib, changing station, toys arranged with the same obsessive precision as everything else in this glass prison. Her mother hadn't just been planning a reunion, she'd been planning a kidnapping. Forced to abandon me? Maya repeated, her voice cracking despite her efforts to maintain control. Linda's expression shifted, becoming almost maternal as she reached out to touch Maya's cheek. The car accident was staged, darling. I had to disappear, had to let the authorities place you in foster care so I could guide your development without interference. It was the most difficult decision I've ever made, but absolutely necessary. The wire beneath Maya's shirt felt burning hot as it transmitted her mother's casual confession. 27 years of grief, of believing herself fundamentally unwanted, and it had all been theater. You let me think you were dead, Maya whispered. I let you think you were alone so you would develop the independence to be perfect when we were reunited. And look, Linda's hands moved to frame Maya's pregnant belly. Look how beautifully it all worked. Maya looked into her mother's eyes and saw no recognition of the cruelty she'd inflicted, no understanding of the damage she'd caused, only pride, satisfaction, and the terrifying certainty of someone who believed absolutely in their own righteousness. The confrontation was just beginning. Maya jerked away from her mother's touch, her heart hammering as Linda's hands fell from her belly. The nursery loomed behind them like a threat made manifest, and suddenly Maya understood that walking away from this greenhouse wouldn't be an option her mother had planned for. You want to raise my daughter here, Maya said, the words coming out flat and certain. That's what this is really about. Linda's smile never wavered. I want to give your daughter what I couldn't give you, a complete family from birth, no abandonment, no confusion, no wondering where she belongs. She'll grow up knowing exactly who she is and where she came from. She'll grow up as your prisoner. Maya's voice was stronger now, anger finally overwhelming the careful performance she'd been maintaining. Just like you wanted me to be. Prisoner? Linda laughed, the sound bright and genuinely amused. Darling, look around you. This is paradise. Every luxury, every comfort, every advantage a child could want. And most importantly, she'll have us, a mother and grandmother who understand her genetic potential, who can guide her development without the interference of well-meaning strangers. Maya glanced toward the greenhouse walls, knowing that somewhere beyond the glass, tactical teams were moving into position. But Linda had chosen sunset for a reason. The dying light would make it nearly impossible for snipers to get clear shots through the refracting glass and hanging plants. What about David? Maya asked, stalling for time while her mind raced through possibilities. My daughter's father has rights. David Williams, 34, software engineer, commitment issues stemming from childhood trauma when his parents divorced. Linda recited the information like she was reading from a file. I've been monitoring him since you began dating. Genetically suitable but psychologically unstable for long-term child-rearing. He won't be a factor. The casual dismissal of David's entire existence, the reduction of a human being to genetic data and psychological assessment, finally shattered Maya's ability to pretend understanding. "You're insane!" Linda's expression shifted, the maternal warmth fading into something colder and more calculating. "I'm visionary. Do you think exceptional families happen by accident? Do you think genius, resilience, true strength develop without careful cultivation? Your daughter will be the culmination of 3 generations of deliberate improvement." 3 generations? My mother was weak, emotional, dependent, unable to make difficult decisions. I spent my childhood watching her waste her potential on conventional relationships, conventional expectations. When I had you, I promised myself that your daughter would be different, that I would ensure she reached her full genetic potential. Maya felt her daughter moving restlessly inside her, as if responding to the tension in her voice. The baby's kicks were strong, insistent, and Maya found herself drawing strength from that movement. Her child was real, present, fighting, everything that Linda's obsession tried to deny. "She's not yours to shape," Maya said quietly. "She's not your experiment. She's my legacy." Linda moved closer, her voice becoming hypnotic, persuasive. "Maya, think about what I'm offering. No financial struggles, no uncertainty about the future, no wondering if you're making the right choices. I'll handle everything. You can focus entirely on being the mother you were always meant to be." For just a moment, Maya felt the terrible temptation of it. The promise of security, of never having to worry about money or making mistakes or facing the terrifying responsibility of raising a child alone. Linda was offering to take away every fear that had kept Maya awake at night for months. But then she looked at the photographs covering the greenhouse walls. 27 years of stolen moments, documented pain, manipulated suffering, and understood the true cost of her mother's offer. Security purchased with freedom, safety bought with autonomy, love that existed only within the boundaries of absolute control. No. The word came out stronger than Maya had expected, carrying weight that seemed to surprise them both. "I won't let you do to her what you did to me." Linda's mask finally slipped completely, revealing something predatory beneath the maternal facade. "You don't have a choice, darling. You never did. Every decision that brought you here, every relationship, every moment of loneliness that made you desperate for family, I orchestrated all of it. You think you're choosing to refuse me? You're simply following the script to its final act." Maya felt cold certainty settle in her chest as she realized her mother was right about one thing. This had always been leading to a choice. Not the choice Linda had planned, but the only choice that mattered, what Maya was willing to sacrifice to ensure her daughter's freedom. She thought about the tactical teams surrounding the greenhouse, about the wire transmitting every word of her mother's confession, about Detective Walsh and Dr. Martinez and Rachel waiting for confirmation that the plan was working. But she also thought about Linda's 27 years of meticulous planning, her resources, her complete lack of moral boundaries. Her mother would never stop. Even if arrested, even if imprisoned, Linda would find ways to reach toward Maya's daughter from whatever cage they managed to construct. The only way to truly end this was to make a sacrifice that Linda's obsessive, controlling mind couldn't plan around. Maya placed both hands protectively over her belly and prepared to make the most important decision of her life. Maya's hands pressed against her belly as her daughter kicked frantically, as if sensing the danger that surrounded them both. The weight of her mother's expectant stare felt suffocating in the humid greenhouse air, but Maya forced herself to meet Linda's eyes directly. "You're right," Maya said, her voice carrying a calm that surprised even her. "I never had a choice before, but I have one now." She stepped backward toward the greenhouse wall, her movements deliberate and measured. Linda's expression shifted from triumph to confusion as Maya's hand found the emergency release lever that controlled the greenhouse's ventilation system. "What are you—" I'm choosing my daughter's freedom over everything else. Maya's grip tightened on the lever, including my own. The sound of shattering glass erupted through the greenhouse as Maya yanked the lever down. Emergency vents burst open along the structure's peak, but more importantly, the sudden pressure change triggered the building's safety systems. Alarms shrieked as automated sprinklers engaged, drenching the interior in seconds. Through the chaos, Maya heard the sharp crack of tactical teams breaching the main entrances. Linda lunged toward her, but Maya was already moving, using her intimate knowledge of the greenhouse layout, burned into her memory during their confrontation, to navigate between the hanging plants and display cases. "You stupid girl!" Linda's voice cut through the alarm noise. "You'll ruin everything!" Maya crashed through a section of orchid displays, soil and pottery exploding around her. Her pregnant body made her clumsy, but desperation gave her strength. Behind her she could hear Linda pursuing, no longer the controlled, elegant woman who had greeted her at the door. The tactical breach was swift and professional. Maya heard Detective Walsh's voice, shouting commands, the heavy footsteps of officers in tactical gear, but Linda was faster than anyone had anticipated. She caught Maya near the nursery section, grabbing her shoulder with surprising strength. 27 years! Linda screamed, her composure finally shattered completely. 27 years of perfect planning, and you destroy it for what? The illusion of choice? Maya spun around, and for the first time in the encounter, she wasn't afraid. The rage in her mother's face, the complete dissolution of the maternal mask, only confirmed what Maya had known deep in her bones. This woman had never loved her. She had loved the idea of control, the satisfaction of manipulation, the godlike power of orchestrating another person's existence. "I'm not destroying anything," Maya said, rain from the sprinkler system streaming down her face. "I'm saving my daughter from becoming your next project." The red laser dots of sniper scopes danced across Linda's chest as tactical officers surrounded them. Detective Walsh appeared through the shattered greenhouse entrance, weapon drawn but held low. "Linda Chen, you're under arrest for kidnapping, stalking, and conspiracy to commit kidnapping. Step away from Maya now." But Linda's grip only tightened, her fingernails digging into Maya's arm. She doesn't understand what she's giving up. A life of struggle, of uncertainty, of making mistakes that will damage her child forever. "I was offering perfection." Perfection? Maya looked around at the ruined greenhouse, at the photographs and files floating in the standing water, at 27 years of obsessive surveillance reduced to soggy paper and broken glass. "This isn't perfection. This is a prison built from your own fears." Agent Chen stepped into view, his weapon trained on Linda with steady precision. The resemblance between the siblings was unmistakable, but where Linda's face held manic intensity, his showed only professional focus tinged with deep sadness. "Let her go, Linda. It's over." "Michael," Linda's voice cracked for the first time. "You were supposed to understand. You were supposed to help me. I spent 30 years trying to help you. This isn't help. This is sickness." The fight seemed to drain out of Linda all at once. Her grip on Maya loosened, and she stepped backward, looking around at the destruction with genuine bewilderment. For a moment, she looked less like a predator and more like a lost woman whose elaborate fantasy had finally collapsed under the weight of reality. Maya felt her daughter deliver a strong kick, and she placed both hands protectively over her belly. The baby was still fighting, still strong, still free. As Detective Walsh moved in to make the arrest, Linda looked at Maya one final time. "You'll regret this. When you're struggling to pay bills, when you make mistakes, when you realize you don't know how to be a mother, you'll remember what I offered." Maya watched as handcuffs clicked around her mother's wrists, feeling something she'd never experienced before, the complete, unqualified certainty that she had made the right choice. "Maybe I will struggle," Maya said quietly. "Maybe I will make mistakes. But they'll be my mistakes to make, and my daughter will grow up knowing that love doesn't require surrender." As Linda was led away, Maya sank onto a bench among the ruined plants, exhaustion finally overwhelming adrenaline. Her phone buzzed with a text from David. "Is it over?" Maya looked around at the shattered greenhouse, at the federal agents collecting evidence, at the life she would now have to build without the shadow of orchestrated manipulation. She typed back, "It's over. We're free." Maya stayed on the bench for another 10 minutes, watching federal agents photograph evidence and carefully bag the waterlogged files that had documented her entire existence. The sprinklers had finally stopped, but water still dripped from hanging plants like tears, and Maya found something oddly comforting in the sound. The greenhouse that had been her mother's monument to control was slowly returning to what it was meant to be. Just plants, just glass, just the natural world reclaiming space from obsession. Detective Walsh appeared beside her, offering an emergency blanket that Maya accepted gratefully. Her clothes were soaked through, and the evening air was turning cold. "Paramedics want to check you and the baby," Walsh said gently. "Just to be safe." Maya nodded, but didn't move yet. "Is she really gone? This time?" "Linda will face federal charges for kidnapping, conspiracy, and about 15 other felonies. Agent Chen estimates she won't be eligible for parole for at least 25 years. Walsh paused. "But more than that, Maya. Her money's frozen, her network is being dismantled, and every authority that failed you as a child now knows the truth. She has no power left." For the first time in months, Maya felt her shoulders truly relax. The fear that had lived in her chest since finding that first locket was finally, genuinely gone. 3 weeks later, Maya stood in the doorway of her apartment, looking at the modest pile of boxes that David and Rachel had helped her pack. Moving day had arrived sooner than expected. Dr. Martinez had found her a larger apartment in a complex with good security and a playground, and the landlord had waived the security deposit after reading about her story in the local paper. "You sure about the rocking chair?" David asked, struggling with the antique piece that had been one of the few items Maya kept from the storage unit. The rest of the contents, the carefully preserved artifacts of her childhood, had been donated to help other foster children. Maya had no desire to build her daughter's nursery from the remnants of Linda's surveillance. "I'm sure." Maya ran her hand along the chair's worn armrest. "It's from before all this started. My grandmother made it, according to the auction records. That makes it actually mine." Rachel emerged from the bedroom carrying a box labeled baby clothes in her careful handwriting. "This is the last of them. Though honestly, you have enough tiny outfits to dress quintuplets." Maya laughed, a sound that came easier now. The baby clothes were gifts, from colleagues at the accounting firm where she'd been promoted to full-time, from neighbors she'd never spoken to before the news coverage, from strangers who had read her story and wanted to help. After 27 years of manufactured isolation, Maya was learning what genuine community felt like. Her phone rang as David loaded the rocking chair into the truck. Agent Chen's name appeared on the screen, and Maya answered with only a slight flutter of anxiety. "Maya, I wanted to update you before you heard it elsewhere. Linda was formally sentenced this morning. 28 years, federal prison, no possibility of parole. It's over." Maya sank into the rocking chair, feeling her daughter respond with a gentle tumble. "How did she take it?" "She asked the judge to give you a message." Agent Chen's voice was carefully neutral. "She wanted you to know she forgives you." Maya was quiet for a long moment, processing the audacity of it. Even in defeat, even facing decades in prison, Linda couldn't acknowledge the harm she'd caused. The forgiveness was just another attempt at control, another way to position herself as the injured party. "You know what's strange?" Maya said finally. "A month ago, that would have destroyed me. I would have spent weeks wondering if I'd made a mistake, if I'd thrown away something valuable. Now it just sounds sad." "That's growth," Agent Chen said. "That's what actual healing looks like." By sunset, Maya was settled in her new living room, surrounded by half-unpacked boxes but feeling more at home than she had anywhere in years. David was assembling the crib, while Rachel organized the kitchen, and Maya found herself thinking about the strange turns her life had taken since that sweltering August day at the storage auction. She'd gone looking for something valuable to sell, and instead found the truth about her past. She'd discovered her mother was alive and learned she was better off believing her dead. She'd been offered everything she thought she wanted: security, family, answers, and chosen uncertainty instead. Her daughter kicked insistently, and Maya placed both hands over her belly, feeling the strong, determined movements of a child who would grow up free to make her own mistakes, her own choices, her own meaning. "What do you think?" David asked, stepping back from the completed crib. "Does it look right?" Maya looked at the simple white crib, at her friends who had chosen to help without expecting anything in return, at the apartment that was hers because she'd earned it, rather than because someone had decided she deserved it. "It looks perfect," she said, and meant it completely. The new beginning. 2 months later, Maya woke not to an alarm but to the soft sounds of her daughter stirring in the crib beside her bed. Lily Chen Garcia. Maya had chosen to keep her own last name while giving her daughter David's as a middle name, was 3 weeks old and already showing signs of the determination that had gotten her through those final chaotic days before birth. Maya lifted her daughter carefully, marveling as she did each morning at the perfect weight of her, the way Lily's dark eyes seemed to focus with unusual intensity for such a young baby. Dr. Martinez had assured her this was normal, but Maya couldn't help wondering if her daughter had inherited some essential strength from surviving those last weeks in utero, while Maya's entire world transformed. "Good morning, little fighter," Maya whispered, settling into the rocking chair that now sat by the window overlooking the apartment complex's small playground. Through the glass, she could see other children playing while their parents watched from nearby benches, and Maya felt a quiet thrill knowing that soon, maybe in just a few years, she and Lily would be part of that ordinary, beautiful scene. The morning routine had become sacred to Maya, feeding Lily while the sun came up, watching her daughter's expressions shift from sleepy contentment to alert curiosity as the day began. These moments belonged entirely to them, with no shadows from the past and no orchestrated manipulations shaping what should happen next. David knocked softly and entered with coffee and the stack of mail that had been accumulating while Maya adjusted to new mother sleep deprivation. Among the usual bills and advertisements was a thick envelope from Agent Chen that made Maya's stomach flutter with old anxiety. "Court stuff?" David asked, settling on the floor near the rocking chair. Maya opened the envelope one-handed while Lily continued nursing. Inside were legal documents formally transferring ownership of all Linda's research files to Maya, along with a letter from Agent Chen explaining that Linda's assets were being liquidated to create a victim compensation fund. Maya would receive a settlement that would ensure Lily's college education and provide genuine financial security, not the manipulated dependence Linda had offered, but actual freedom. The final page was a note in Agent Chen's careful handwriting. "She wrote you letters from prison, 17 of them so far. I'm required to offer them to you, but I want you to know that nothing in them constitutes an apology. Take them only if you think they'll help your healing process." Maya set the papers aside without reading the details about the letters. She might want to see them someday, when Lily was older, when enough time had passed that Linda's words couldn't touch the life Maya was building, or she might never want to read them at all. The choice was entirely hers, and that felt revolutionary. "Everything okay?" David's voice carried the gentle concern that had become familiar over the past months. He'd proven himself completely wrong about his own capacity for commitment, showing up for every doctor's appointment, every 3 a.m. feeding, every moment of uncertainty with steady reliability. "Everything's perfect," Maya said, and realized she meant it in a way she'd never understood before. Not perfect like Linda's obsessive control, but perfect like this, messy and uncertain and real. Rachel arrived an hour later with groceries and the latest updates from her online searches. She'd become Maya's unofficial guardian against unwanted attention, monitoring news coverage and fielding interview requests from journalists who wanted to explore the psychological thriller aspects of Maya's story. Most requests were declined, but Rachel had helped Maya choose 2 interviews with reputable outlets that focused on foster care reform and family reunification protocols. 3 more documentary requests this week, Rachel reported, unpacking vegetables while Maya burped Lily. I told them you're not interested in being anyone's cautionary tale. Maya nodded gratefully. The story had captured public attention: the pregnant woman, the storage unit, the decades-long stalking by a supposedly dead mother. But Maya had no desire to become a professional victim or inspiration. She wanted to disappear back into ordinary life, to become just another working mother navigating daycare decisions and pediatrician appointments. As afternoon faded toward evening, Maya found herself alone with Lily, David having returned to work and Rachel to her own life. The apartment was quiet, except for the small sounds her daughter made while sleeping, tiny sighs and the whisper of breathing that Maya sometimes checked obsessively, still unable to believe that something so perfect could be entirely hers to protect. Maya looked around the living room at the life she'd built from nothing. Photos of friends on the mantel, books she'd chosen on the shelves, a future that stretched ahead with no predetermined path. Tomorrow she would start interviewing daycare providers. Next month she would return to work part-time. Next year Lily would take first steps across floors that Maya had chosen, toward people who loved them both without conditions. Outside the window, the playground was empty now, but Maya could envision summer evenings when she would push her daughter on those swings, teaching her that love meant freedom to fly as high as she wanted, knowing someone would always be there to catch her if she fell. For the first time in her adult life, Maya Chen was exactly where she belonged.